Hello and welcome to Philosophy Vibe, the channel where we discuss and debate different philosophical ideas. Today we're going to be looking into pessimism and the philosophical underpinnings of a pessimistic perspective. Fascinating. So, pessimism is not really a philosophical theory in and of itself. It is categorized more as a worldview or an attitude towards life. On the surface level, pessimism is a negative outlook on life itself. It is the feeling and attitude that existence, or indeed human existence, is a negative, and the experience of life itself is just full of misery and pain. It is often referred to as a glass half empty point of view, and indeed the belief is that it would be better if we as people never existed in the first place. Now, philosophical pessimism looks into more specific philosophical theories that serve as a roadmap to a pessimistic outlook. In this video, we will run through some of these theories and we will debate whether pessimism is indeed the correct or reasonable approach to life. Great, let's begin. Very well. So, the first theory I would like to touch upon is nihilism. I would argue that a pessimistic attitude can indeed start with a nihilist realization. Nihilism is seen as the belief that life itself has no inherent meaning or value, and we as people have no true or real purpose in life. Friedrich Nietzsche is often seen as one of the pioneers of nihilism. During the 19th century, with the advances in evolutionary biology and the decline in religious belief, Nietzsche famously proclaimed that God is dead. What he meant by this is that humans no longer saw a reason to believe in an all-powerful creator and life-giver who gives all human life and all people meaning and purpose. When we really think about it, if we eliminate an all-powerful creator, we are basically left with an empty universe. We come to see our life as just chance rather than purpose. We are here by accident, sitting on a spinning ball shooting through the universe until we or the planet dies, and that is that. There is no inherent value or meaning in our lives. We are not here for a reason. No one is here for a reason. Life is ultimately empty and meaningless, an accident that emerged in the chaos. This really hits hard, especially if you truly believe that life was sacred and meaningful. We then see that there is no true reason to be here. Life does not revolve around us. We are born, we wander around this planet, and then we die. Nothing really matters. Of course, this would bring us a lot of emotional distress and can begin our pessimistic outlook on life. If God is dead, then so is meaning and purpose. We are then insignificant lumps of matter that will come and go. Wow, this is very depressing. Unfortunately, yes. So, from nihilism, I would now like to touch upon absurdism. This was made famous by the 20th century writer Albert Camus. Absurdism is basically an extension of nihilism, but it serves as a reminder of the sheer unfortunate state of the human experience. Absurdism accepts the nihilist position that life has no true value or meaning. However, it also recognizes that human beings are indeed born with an inherent desire to find meaning and purpose in life. The human experience is therefore a complete contradiction. We are born with an innate disposition to find meaning in an inherently meaningless universe. We are born looking for answers in a silent universe. This is the juxtaposition that we must endure, the absurdity of our reality, and thus absurdism highlights the stress and frustration we all go through, the angst we must suffer through every single day. Once again, setting further down the pessimistic worldview, would it not be better if we did not have to suffer through this existential and emotional torture? Would it not be better if we never existed in the first place? Yes, this makes sense. So, nihilism and absurdism focuses on the more abstract and, for lack of a better term, spiritual aspects of the human experience. I now want to look at the physical side of the human experience and how this can lead to a pessimistic outlook. Let's turn to the works of Arthur Schopenhauer, the 19th century philosopher and described as the father of pessimism. Schopenhauer wrote fascinating works on the will in a metaphysical sense, but it is this will in a physical sense that greatly adds to the pessimistic outlook. The will, the striving to fulfill our desires, be it sexual desires, pleasures in food and drink, the accumulation of wealth, the attainment of power, these are all part of the human will. However, this will cannot be satiated. Whenever we follow the will and try to satisfy our desires, soon enough they will return. We can find gratification in intercourse, but soon enough the gratification disappears and the desire is back. We can find pleasure in food, but this satiates the will momentarily, and straight away this will is screaming for more. We can achieve our goals only to want new goals and to progress further. The human will is insatiable, and when we do not fulfill our desires, this only leads to suffering. Our lives are then spent satiating the will momentarily, only to find another desire to fulfill. And if we do not fulfill these desires, we remain miserable. But if we constantly fulfill these desires, we find boredom. And so Schopenhauer claims life swings like a pendulum back and forward between pain and boredom. We must carry these unachievable goals with us throughout our lives, and slowly they will crush us. We must therefore live striving for the impossible, bitter and upset that we cannot reach it. And so Schopenhauer concludes, existence becomes an intolerable burden for us.
I see.
In addition to living as a constant slave to our will, never being able to please it, we must also live in a world full of pain and suffering. Schopenhauer acknowledged that human consciousness and human reason only adds to the suffering as we have realization and cognitive ability to truly see how horrible this world is. As biological beings with a high level of consciousness, we are fully aware of our mortality, constantly living in fear of death and fear of the unknown. Our reason leads us to conclude that our weak, frail bodies are not something we would have designed, that we are flawed by our very design, yet there is nothing we can do about it. And so Schopenhauer explains, if you try to imagine, as nearly as you can, what an amount of misery, pain and suffering of every kind the sun shines upon in its course, you will admit that it would be much better if on the earth, as little as on the moon, the sun were able to call forth the phenomena of life, and if, here as there, the surface was still in a crystalline state.
I can definitely see why he would be labelled the father of pessimism.
So to sum up, nihilism shows us that there is no inherent meaning or value to life. There is no creator putting us here, and there is no reason for our existence. Absurdism reminds us of the sheer contradiction in our existence, the fact that we still strive to find meaning in a completely meaningless world, and we must suffer this absurdity. And Schopenhauer shows us how unfulfilling life actually is. All we do is suffer. We either live a life of suffering, unable to satiate our desires, or we live a life of complete boredom while still trying to survive in a horrible world with a frail body constantly experiencing pain and anguish. All of this shows the horror that is life and leads one to develop a negative attitude, to develop a gloom-ridden outlook, to develop pessimism.
Very interesting, and yes, when we focus on the really negative parts of life, it is completely understandable to develop a negative outlook and to become a pessimist. And indeed, the pessimist does have some excellent points. Life is tough, it is brutal, it is violent, there are no obvious answers, meaning and purpose are not apparent.
Yes.
However, I will challenge the pessimist outlook that life is only suffering and that the only attitude we should have is negative. I do not think this is the best way to approach life, nor do I think life deserves such a bleak judgment.
Really?
Yes, I'm not going to give a super optimistic view on life. I know that life has a lot of pain and suffering, be it emotional, spiritual and physical, but to say that life is only pain and suffering is wrong.
Explain.
Okay, let's start with nihilism. Now, nihilism as a belief or philosophy completely hinges on the disbelief in a god or creator. The moment one has some sort of faith in a deity, nihilism kind of ceases to exist. If we have some sort of creator, some sort of life giver, an intelligent designer, then instantly we feel there is a purpose, that we were created for a reason, and that everything that happens does indeed happen for a reason. This gives one's life meaning and dampens a pessimistic outlook.
Yes, but for many people, faith does not exist. No one can be forced to believe, and when we see the chaos, destruction, pain and suffering in the world, one is almost compelled to disbelief. It can be strongly argued that given the world we live in, no God is more likely than a God, and so the seeds of pessimism will be sown.
I disagree with that point, but I do not want to get into a debate around the existence of God. So I want to argue, even without a God, it does not necessarily mean that all meaning, value and purpose disappears from our life.
Really?
Yes, of course. We can take the existentialist philosophy and look at creating our own meaning, giving ourselves a purpose and making our own value out of life. Just because there might not be a God does not mean we have to see life in such a negative way. Nietzsche developed the concept of the Übermensch and told humans we should strive to this. Camus developed the concept of the absurd man and believed that humans should strive for this. We can still have ideals, goals and a purpose to live. It does not have to be dictated by a deity in order for it to be real. It is real because we make it real. It is real because we exist. Our lives make it real. To suppose that meaning and purpose are only true if God demands them to be so is a mistake. So our lives do not have to be devoid of meaning, and we do not have to be so pessimistic about life.
Even still, we can be existentialists and try to develop our own meaning, or we can try to become Übermensches or absurd men. Nonetheless, we are still frail, flawed humans in a cruel world, unable to satisfy our desires. This is still a horrible position to be in. You are basically saying, make the most out of what you have, but the pessimist can say, what we have is not worth having, and as Schopenhauer claims, life is a burden, and it would be better if we had never existed.
This sounds like an outlook that comes from a place of personal depression and dissatisfaction rather than an objective truth for all human beings. Again, I am not denying that the world is a tough place, but it seems like you are denying the beauty, pleasure and happiness that also comes with being alive. Think about the passion one feels when they embrace the love of a partner, the ecstasy they may feel indulging in corporal pleasures, the joy they feel when they hold their child, the satisfaction one feels when they accomplish a professional goal, or the elation when they achieve an artistic goal. There is so much greatness in life that the pessimist is completely avoiding and leaves out of the discussion.
It is not so much avoiding, but more so understanding that the pain outweighs the pleasure, and so as a net output, life has more pain and suffering.
Again, I disagree. I think there's just as much good points to life as bad, or in fact, more good than bad. And more so, I think the negative aspects are needed in order to appreciate the good. Similar to the Irenaean theodicy within the problem of evil debate, hot is needed for cold, tall is needed for short, and bad is needed for good. If we had a life of constant pleasure, it wouldn't actually exist. It would be like breathing oxygen, just a regular thing. We wouldn't appreciate it. It would be completely meaningless. It is because we know what it is to suffer that we know what it is to feel joy. It is because we know what it is to hate that we know what it is to love. Both are needed for the human experience.
But even still, the pleasure you're referring to is part of the human will. As Schopenhauer explained, as we strive to satisfy this, we are just on an endless impossible path. We remain unsatiated or bored. I'll borrow a quote from Oscar Wilde that summarizes this perfectly. There are only two tragedies in life. One is not getting what one wants, and the other is getting it. So basically, we are damned if we do, and we are damned if we don't, and our lives are guaranteed to be a tragedy.
If you are talking about one specific goal, then perhaps I can see what you're saying, but not many people have just one goal that they strive for. People's lives are multifaceted. There is professional goals, artistic goals, relationship goals, family goals, health goals, beauty goals, possession goals, experience goals, and so on and so on. We achieve some, we fail in others, but this is what gives our life purpose. This is the reason we get out of bed. This is what life is. This is living. It is not about achieving one thing in one area, but a holistic overview.
Could someone just say, you've had an easy life, you haven't really suffered, and so you do not understand pessimism?
I do understand it. Look, I think everyone has experienced pain and suffering on some level, some more than others of course, but it exists in everyone. And yes, those who have had less suffering are maybe more prone to optimism, I don't know. However, I'm not trying to be an optimist, I'm trying to see life for what it is. If pessimism is only meant for those who have suffered, for those who have experienced a high level of pain, then you're admitting it is not and cannot be a universal outlook, that it is merely a personal attitude one has based on the events of their life. If this is the case, then pessimism is not an absolute truth, but a subjective perspective, and it is one you can change.
Interesting. If you would like the script to this video and you would like to help support the channel, then please check out the Philosophy Vibe Existentialism ebook available on Amazon. Also, we have some great merch available on Spring, some awesome philosophy themed t-shirts, hoodies, mugs and more. All sales really help us out and we really appreciate it. But that's all the time we have for now. Thank you for watching, we hope you enjoyed the vibe, and what does everyone else think? Who out there is a pessimist, and why do you hold such a negative outlook on life? Let us know in the comments below, don't forget to like and share, and for more philosophical debates, please subscribe to the channel. Take care, and we look forward to seeing you all soon. Bye bye.